Hey there. Welcome back to the Rooted R, Medicinal Mysteries. Today, we're taking a trip to South America to talk about a fascinating medicinal herb called quina. This herb comes from a tree called the Cinchona tree, and it was used for hundreds of years for its anti-malarial properties. We're going to talk about the history of this herb, its traditional uses, and the scientific studies that have shown its efficacy. We're going to start our story in the early 1600s, when Spanish missionaries arrived in South America and heard from the local healers about a bark that could cure malaria. The missionaries were curious and skeptical and decided to investigate. They traveled to the Andes Mountains, where they met a woman named Countess de Cinchona. The countess lived on a plantation and had used the bark to treat her servants for malaria. She taught the missionaries how to harvest the bark and how to prepare a tea-like remedy to treat the illness. Intrigued, the missionaries took the bark back to Europe to study. They found that the bark was bitter and did not taste good, but it did seem to help with fevers. Over the next few decades, more missionaries and explorers came to South America and returned with samples of the bark. It wasn't until 1632 that a Jesuit missionary named Bernardo de Claton brought a small amount of Cinchona bark back to Europe. The bark was tested and found to be effective against malaria, and word spread quickly among the medical community. Now, there's some debate over whether or not the bark was actually discovered by the Spanish, or if it was known to the indigenous peoples long before then. What we do know is that the Spaniards recognized the potential of the bark and began to hoard the secret closely. They kept the source of the bark a secret to prevent other Europeans from finding it and exploiting it. For their own gain, they even went so far as to burn the trees to prevent anyone else from harvesting the bark. They also developed complicated procedures for extracting the active ingredients from the bark. As you might imagine, this secrecy did not last. Other European powers soon learned about the bark and began searching for it. By the 1700s, the French, Dutch, and English were all growing Cinchona trees in their colonies in an effort to produce their own supply of the bark. The race was on to find the source of the bark and bring it back to Europe. The Spanish were successful in keeping the location of the bark a secret for many years. But eventually, the secret got out, and the other Europeans began arriving in South America in search of the tree. Some of the expeditions were successful, but many were not. One of the most famous expeditions was led by a French botanist named Pierre. Poivre was sent by the French East India Company to find Cinchona trees in South America and bring them back to France. After a long and dangerous journey, he found the trees and managed to smuggle several cuttings back to France. Once in France, he shared his knowledge of the tree with the French colonial authorities and began growing his own supply of Cinchona bark. Poivre's success led to a flurry of similar expeditions over the next few decades. Many of these expeditions were dangerous and difficult, but the rewards were great. The Cinchona trees were highly prized, and the bark was worth a lot of money. By the 1800s, quinine had become one of the most important drugs in the world. It was used to prevent and treat malaria, which was a common illness among travelers and soldiers in tropical climates. Quinine was also used to treat other illnesses such as fevers and agues. The demand for quinine was so high that plantations of Cinchona trees were established in many parts of the world, including India, Sri Lanka, and East Africa. Despite the success of quinine, the knowledge of the Cinchona tree remained a closely guarded secret. The Spanish had successfully protected their valuable resource from the rest of the world for many years. However, in the 1860s, the French chemist Pierre Ballard discovered the active ingredient in Cinchona bark, and the game changed. With the knowledge of how to synthesize quinine, other countries no longer needed to rely on the Spanish for their supply. Quinine was now a commodity that could be produced anywhere in the world. This discovery had a profound impact on the world. Malaria was no longer a major threat to travelers and soldiers, and Cinchona bark became one of the most important botanical discoveries of all time. It is still used today to treat malaria and other fevers, and its importance in the history of medicine cannot be overstated. So why exactly does Cinchona work so well for malaria? Well, there are several theories. One theory is that quinine interferes with the ability of the parasite to multiply. Another theory is that it inhibits the growth of the parasite. And a third theory is that it boosts the immune system's ability to fight off the infection. Whatever the mechanism, the results are clear. Cinchona is an effective treatment for malaria and other fevers. These days, you can buy Cinchona in a variety of forms, including bark extract, capsules, and tea. It is available over the counter in many countries and is considered safe when used in moderation. However, It is important to note that Cinchona should not be used as a substitute for traditional medical treatment. Now, I want to take a moment to address something that has been bugging me ever since I started researching this topic. You see, the way this story is usually told, the indigenous peoples are portrayed as a mysterious, almost mystical race of people who possess secret knowledge of nature. While it is true that the indigenous peoples of the Americas had a deep understanding of plants and herbs, it is important to avoid perpetuating harmful stereotypes. The indigenous peoples are not a monolith and should not be portrayed as a single homogeneous group. Each tribe and nation has its own unique culture and history, and should be treated as such. Additionally, the term primitive is often used to describe the indigenous cultures, which is a derogatory and inaccurate term that implies a lack of sophistication or development. The indigenous cultures were sophisticated and complex societies with rich traditions and customs that should be respected. I want to emphasize that the indigenous peoples are not a mystery to be solved or a puzzle to be deciphered. They are real people with real cultures and histories who have made significant contributions to our understanding of the world. It is important to approach the study of indigenous cultures with respect and humility, recognizing that we have much to learn from these cultures, rather than viewing them as objects of curiosity or study. If you're interested in learning more about the history of Cinchona and quinine, I highly recommend checking out the resources provided. One of the most interesting aspects of this case is the role that secrecy played in shaping its outcome. The Spanish were successful in keeping the source of Cinchona secret for many years, but eventually the secret got out, and the game changed. This raises questions about the ethics of secrecy and the importance of transparency in scientific research. Secrecy can be a powerful tool for protecting valuable resources and preventing exploitation, but it can also hinder the progress of science and prevent the sharing of knowledge. Transparency, on the other hand, allows for the scrutiny and feedback of the wider scientific community, leading to more robust and reliable results. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to keep a discovery secret is a complex one with far-reaching implications. I've always been fascinated by the Cinchona story, because it's a reminder that the world is full of mysteries that we may never fully understand. There is so much that we don't know about the natural world, and the discoveries that have shaped our understanding of it are truly remarkable. I hope this video has given you a new appreciation for the power of curiosity and the importance of exploring the unknown. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode of Medicinal Mysteries. Until next time, happy herb hunting and stay curious.